I'm traveling the country speaking about this issue, and I'm also, going across the country with the Trump campaign, and I actually talked to him last night. Greatest president in my lifetime, and he will be again in January. So go ahead.
So, one of the things I want to start with was your background. You obviously started out in local law enforcement, eventually went into Border Patrol, and one of the things people know you from is the Trump administration and also Fox News. You were given an award by President Obama. So one of the things I wanted you to do is just give your background, where you started, and your career of growth in federal service.
Well, again, I grew up right outside of Fort Drum, New York, which keeps the North Country alive, so thanks for anything you do for Fort Drum. And I became a police officer there in the same town. My dad was an officer, my grandfather was an officer. So growing up, I always knew I was going to be some sort of cop, so I became a cop, and I joined the Border Patrol in 1984. Was in the San Diego sector. From there, I became a special agent. And I climbed the ladder one rung at a time. I was the first director of ICE that actually came up through the ranks. President Trump gave me that job. So the 20,000 men and women, thank you. That was one of my proudest moments, because I was actually the first director who came up through the ranks, which means the 20,000 men and women that worked for me, I didn't ask them to do anything that I didn't do myself, because I was one of them. I'd done many criminal investigations. And I was third in command. I'll tell you a quick story, because this is a true story. I was third in command of ICE in 2016. And I announced my retirement just before the election because I was convinced Hillary Clinton was going to win. I was convinced. I think that most of the country was. So I said, after 8 years of Obama, no way I'm going to work for her, so I announced my retirement. 120 days in advance, which means in January I leave. And I remember election night, and I signed a contract with this company making a hell of a lot more money than I ever made with the government. So my wife was happy. No more death threats. She was happy about that too. And the election happened. And the next morning I wake up, my wife says, "Hey, Trump won. Now what are you going to do?" And so I said, "Well, I already signed this contract with this company. I don't know the legalities of that, and they're already looking for my replacement, so I got to stick with my plan." In my retirement party in January, at the end of the ceremony, the saddest day of my life. Saddest day of my life, because when you're a cop for 30-some years, and all of a sudden you're going to hang it up, and that day you're no longer a cop, you're just going to be a regular citizen. It was a sad day, but at the end of the ceremony, my chief of staff came to me and said, "You got an emergency phone call in your office." Now, my office is already empty, right? My boxes are already packed up in my garage, because this is a Friday. I'm starting my new job on Monday. So I walked up and picked up the phone, and it was the Secretary of Homeland Security, John Kelly. He says, "Tom, I know this is bad timing, but President Trump wants you to stay and run the agency and take a 3-step promotion." And I said, "Bad timing, sir, I just retired." He goes, "No, you didn't. Paperwork's on my desk. I haven't signed it." So I told him, I said, "Look, with all due respect, I need to talk to my family." I says, "I just signed this contract. I don't know what my legalities are there, but my family went through hell. I mean, death threats against my family, my wife. We got pictures of my son walking to school, saying they're going to kill him. When you get pictures of your son walking to school and they say they're going to kill him, that lights up the world, right?" So I said, I need to talk to my family, so I need to talk to him. He said, "Okay, this is Friday, you got Monday, 06 Sunday, I'm calling you, I need an answer." And before I hung up, Secretary Kelly says, "I want you to leave with this thought, Tom." And I remember this word for word. I actually wrote it in my book. He says, "President Trump, the President of the United States, is asking you, a career law enforcement officer, to serve your country a little bit longer. He needs your help, Tom. I'll talk to you on Monday." So after a weekend of fighting with my wife, we fought all weekend, on Sunday night she goes, "What are you going to do?" I says, "What do you think I'm going to do?" She goes, "You're going to do it, ain't you?" I says, "The President of the United States." She goes, "I don't care, I don't like him." And she didn't. And I tell you, she's his biggest fan now, because she saw what he did for this country. He totally turned her 180. So I said, "I'm going to say yes." So the next day I said yes. So the White House announced it. The following day I show up at ICE. To the amazement, hundreds of employees will give me a shitload of gifts a couple days before, because they thought I was retiring. And the very next morning, I'm in Air Force One, the greatest president of my lifetime, Donald Trump.
asylum work. During the Trump administration, there were some things that were different from past administrations. For example, he was able to get enough judges in and cut down the frivolous asylum claims that people that are asylum seekers were able to get a hearing typically within 24 months, which is now up to 7 years. The reason that's important is because typically the real asylum seekers are, a victim of female genital mutilation or somebody who's targeted because of religion. Some of the other things that went on is, on average, prior to the Trump administration, they would only target about 100 people a year to denaturalize, like people that committed fraud to become a citizen. They were doing over 1,000 a year. How bad is the Biden administration in comparison to the other administrations you worked for, and why?
Well, look, I knew when Biden became the president, I wrote an op-ed for Fox News 6 months before the election. And I said, if Joe Biden becomes president, we lose the border. And we did. And look, I wake up every day pissed off, because we handed this administration the most secure border in my lifetime, and we worked our ass off to get it that way. I worked for 6 presidents, starting with, when I came to board, it was Ronald Reagan. Every president I worked for, even Clinton and Obama, took steps to secure the border, because they understood you can't possibly have national security if you don't have border security. You got to know what's coming in, who's coming in, why they're coming in, where they're coming in, all that. So every president I worked for took steps to secure the border. No one did more than Trump. What he did, he's a badass president. He was unprecedented in his success in securing the border. Joe Biden's the first president in history of the nation who came in office and unsecured a border on purpose. On purpose. This isn't mismanagement. This isn't incompetence. This is by design. So they're trying to change the whole electorate. So I wake up every day pissed off, because when you have a secure border, lives are saved.
Right.
When Trump Doctors Without Borders did a study. This is one of the reasons I get upset every day. Doctors Without Borders did a study that said 31% of women that make that journey through their use of cartels come to the country get sexually assaulted. 31% of women admitted to being sexually assaulted. So if 31% of them admitted it, how many is it, right? So when people say, Homan, you're a racist, Homan, you and Trump, you're bigots and you're inhumane, I respond to them with a simple question. Let me ask you a question. When Trump had illegal immigration down 90% when he left office, when 90% less people were coming, how many women weren't being raped? How many children weren't drowning in the river? How many Americans weren't dying from fentanyl that wasn't coming across the border? How many no-inspected terrorists didn't make in the country? How many billions did the cartels not make? How many women and children weren't sex trafficked into the United States? President Trump's policy saved lives. Under Joe Biden, since he's been president, over 1,700 aliens have died crossing the border. An historic record, 1,700. Over 148,000 Americans dead from fentanyl. 354 people on the terrorist watch list arrested on the southern border, twice as many on the northern border. The data is clear. President Trump's policies saved lives. Joe Biden's policies are killing Americans and aliens at record numbers. So there's nothing humane about this. So that's where we went from. We went from the most secure border, 45-year low in illegal immigration, to historic numbers. Historic. 1.7 million first year, 2.3 million the second year, 3.2 the third year. And we're on a glide path right now to beat that. By the time Joe Biden leaves office, which he will in January, we have about 12 million people come to this country.
Well, one of the things also is 30% of those women being sexually assaulted, that doesn't even include, a lot of them are sexually assaulted multiple times over. So of that 30%, it's not just one incident. Could you explain to people, they often hear 7 million encounters, 8 million encounters. That encounter data, that doesn't mean 8 million people cross. The encounters could be the same person multiple times?
Sometimes. And the administration says, well, some of these people, we call them 2 or 3 times. Yeah, so didn't we in 1984. So don't think it's something new to this administration, try to fix the numbers. It's always been that way. I mean, I remember when I was a Border Patrol agent back in 1984. I'm old. I arrested the same illegal alien 3 times in one day. 3 times. Because, back then you reprocess, you kick him south, you catch him again. And the reason I recognized was he was missing 3 fingers on his hand. So, we deal with so many, it's hard to remember them. But when, you get arrest a guy with missing 3 fingers, you know he is. So, yes, it's always happened that way. But still, We're talking about historic numbers, and this is what we're not talking about. In addition to the 8 million that have been encountered, there's over 2 million known gotaways. 2 million people have crossed the border. They were caught on video, drone traffic, or sensor traffic, so we have their images, but they weren't apprehended because the Border Patrol was too busy changing diapers, making baby formula, making lunches, making airport runs. And I'm serious. Every day, 70% of agents are no longer on patrol. They're taking care of this humanitarian crisis, feeding, clothing, taking people to hospitals, which means only 30% of the Border Patrol is on patrol. This past year, four separate times, Eagle Pass sector, Yuma sector, Laredo sector, and El Paso, there was several days where there was not a single Border Patrol agent on patrol because they're all called in process. Hundreds of miles of border, not a single Border Patrol agent. How many pounds of fentanyl think came across the country during that time? So with 2 million known gotaways, if you hear anything I say today, here's the most important thing you need to remember. This is the biggest national security vulnerability this nation has faced since 9/11. Let me tell you why. I've already said they arrested 358 people on the terrorist watch list trying to sneak in the southern border. I told twice as many on the northern border. Let's just take the southern border for now. 358 on the terrorist watch list. They've arrested people from 181 different countries. Some of these countries are sponsored for terror. If they've arrested 358, how many of the 2 million came from a country sponsoring terror? Terrorists don't want to be arrested. The 354 that got arrested, obviously morons, didn't know what the hell they were doing. Terrorists are trained how we invade law enforcement. So if you don't think a single one of that 2 million didn't come here to blow something up, then you're ignorant. Look, something is coming, folks. It's coming. And even the director of FBI testified several times, he's never seen more red flags than he sees right now. Something's coming. And here, I'll leave you with this, because I want to foot stomp this issue. After 9/11, I was in D.C. We created all these databases so people couldn't get a visa and come here and blow something up. We got a visa security program. We had the no-fly list. We had the FBI screening database. We got the DOD intelligence bases. We had all these databases, so if someone tries to get a plane ticket or visa to come here, they're vetted through all these different databases. However, who's going to put themselves in a position now to get a plane ticket or visa and go through the vetting process when they simply go to Mexico and cross the border? This is, I'm telling you, biggest national security vulnerability we've ever seen in this country. Something's coming. I don't know how many came under Biden, but someday we're going to find out very soon, and it's going to be a bad day for America.
As far as the asylum claims, when this all started with the border opening, first they were asylum seekers, then they became migrants. Now I guess we just call them neighbors. I don't know. But the reality is there's a very narrow pathway to asylum. It's typically you're politically persecuted, you're persecuted because you're a part of a religious group, etc. How many of these people do you believe have a legitimate asylum claim? And for the ones that are procedurally defective, where they didn't properly go to a port of entry, why are they just not being sent back? Why are we acting and wasting time even processing them when we know they're never going to get granted asylum?
That's a great question. And let me tell you what this administration is doing. First of all, if you go back 10 years in immigration court data, go back 10 years, an average 9 out of 10 people who claim asylum at the border never get relief from U.S. courts because they simply don't qualify or they don't show up in court. 9 out of 10. So the left likes to say, these are asylum seekers. They're asylum seekers. Yeah, you can call them asylum seekers. I guess they're seeking it fraudulently. But you can call them asylum seekers. But here's what they're doing. They know 9 out of 10 won't qualify. Because asylum, as you said, you're escaping fear and persecution from your home state government because of race, religion, political affiliation, or participation in a specific social group. For like say, if you're gay, and you're from Iraq, they'll kill you. So that's one of the things you can claim asylum. So 9 out of 10 will fail. But here's what Secretary Mayorkas, who should have been impeached 3 years ago, here's what he's doing, because he has the same data points I have. 9 out of 10 will be ordered removed. So why aren't we detaining them? Because of the Homeland Security Life Cycle Report, the Secretary's own report says this: if you get an order removal and you're in ICE detention, you're removed 99.7% of the time. However, if you're not in detention, you get an order removal, you only leave 6% of the time. That's why they're not detaining them. That's why they're releasing them. There are thousands of empty ICE beds right now at $127 a night that you all pay for. It's already paid for by taxpayers. Thousands of empty ICE beds, $127 a night. But Mayor Adams would rather put them in a hotel, $500 a night, with 3 square meals a day, free medical care, and work authorization. This administration knows exactly what they're doing. They're bringing millions in, but if they don't detain them, even though they get removed, even though they get order removed, they're not leaving. That's the plan. Bring millions in, make it almost impossible for them to be removed.
So another thing that President Trump and many Republicans say is a magnet for people to come here is birthright citizenship. They just want to get here, have the American child. If you've ever been in immigration court, you'll see people, they'll go in and they'll say, I really don't have a claim for asylum, but now I have an American citizen who's a child. And you know, the On case that everyone cited was involving an individual whose parents had legal status for nearly 20 years. There's never actually been an adjudication when it comes to a tourist or an illegal immigrant having a citizen on American soil. The legislative intent at the time was for freed slaves. Let's say if you're in Alabama and you get to Ohio, if you have a child, then that child would then be a full American citizen. So my question to you is, how important is it for the next administration and the United States Congress and Senate to act on this this status that the babies of illegal immigrants becoming birthright citizens?
It's imperative. I mean, that's one of the first things that needs to happen, because this is enticement. And people say, well, illegal aliens don't take social services. That's a bunch of crap. First thing they do is have a U.S. citizen kid, and then they qualify for everything. So, you know, birthright citizenship's a major enticement. They need to end it. They need to end catch and release. They need to stop giving work authorization to people. That's why they came to work. Right. And this administration said, well, we'll give them work authorization after 30 days. So they're rewarding them. Look, why wouldn't you want to come to the greatest nation on earth if all, because you got to say, okay, well, I turn myself in to Border Patrol. I get released within 24 hours. I get flown to the city of my choice at taxpayer money. I get put in a free hotel room. I get 3 meals a day. I get free medical care, and they don't give me work authorization in 30 days. Why the hell wouldn't they come? Right? So under Trump administration, we're going to have consequences, like we did the last administration. There won't be no work authorization. There won't be no catch and release. Crossing the border is a crime. I had to educate AOC. You know, most people that recognize me at the airport, they don't even forget I'm my ICE director. Remind, saw you with AOC on YouTube. That's something me and AOC went at, because AOC is probably the dumbest congressperson in the history of the United States Congress. Rashida Tlaib, close second, but I think AOC takes the crown. And I had to educate her that entering the country illegally is a crime. It's not okay. So people right now are saying, well, you know, Secretary Mayorkas has told ICE, being in the country illegally on its own without a serious criminal conviction on top of the illegal entry, ICE is not even allowed to look for them. If you're in the country illegally, ICE isn't looking for you. Well, that shit's about to change in January.
Another question I wanted to ask is, if the president comes in, President Trump comes back, reinstitutes Remain in Mexico, is that retroactive? Like the people that are now, like let's say in Texas or New Mexico, are they going to be sent back across the border to wait for their adjudication? Or is it just going to start for people that are coming as of January 2025?
The Remain in Mexico will start again for people entering the country. The ones who are illegally, they're going to go home.
Okay.
My question is, which might be a little radical, that's just who I am. The migrants or illegal immigrants, you just said they're breaking the law by crossing the border, right? Right. But our president and our elected leaders in certain areas like Adams are giving them permission to do so, which means they, in essence, are breaking the law. Our president right now is compromising the entire country. He's breaking multiple laws, both federal and state. Is there no mechanism in place whereby he can literally just be walked out of office? Because he's a danger to the country. So why are we waiting for the danger to hit and explode when the American public is saying, absolutely not, we don't agree with this? Why are we waiting for this to become so detrimental where we're going to be reacting instead of responding?
Well, the problem is if everybody in Congress was a reasonable thinking American patriot, you could remove him. There's methods to remove him. However, since the Democrats control the Senate, it's never going to happen.
So then when do the people take over Congress and say, you're not doing your job? So then now we need to we now need to remove you or just take over.
Vote at the ballot box, that's the best thing.
Yeah, look, it's a couple of things. First of all, Governor Abbott, he's doing it on his own because the federal government failed to do it. Governor Iowa, they're going to start wrestling with lands in their state. Governors that believe in the rule of law, they can start doing Abbott in Iowa and other countries, North Dakota's doing, start arresting them, start enforcing law on your own since the federal government refuses to do so. But that's why I say this election is so important. I mean, look, what they've done in the last 3.5 years, it's going to take a decade to fix it. But if we don't win it in November, we're never going to fix it. I don't think we can fix it, so it's important.
The other thing is, you said, how do we walk President Biden out of the White House? I would suggest visiting angels would be a good start.
You visit what?
Visiting angels, that would be a good start. Something that people don't know, a lot of people don't know, is President Eisenhower in the 1950s, at one point deported over 1.3 million people in 1 year. He lacked the technology we have today, both with the military, with federal law enforcement, with identification, etc. You were talking about a lot of records that the Biden administration broke. You think you could break President Eisenhower's record of deporting over 1.3 million people in 1 year?
Count on it. About 3 years ago, I'm sitting in my office in the basement. My wife comes running down, and she gets mad because I swear during these things. So I'm sorry if I offend anybody. Actually, I'm not. But I got to say that for her benefit because I say shit a lot, but that's just who I am. Anyways, it's about 3.5 years ago. She came running downstairs with the Washington Post, and said, "Look what they did to you." Because they're always doing hit pieces on me, but I don't care. I mean, I really don't care. My wife, a big part of the country hates you. I don't care. I don't care. If I can live in their minds rent-free, that's kind of cool. I don't care. But she came down, the Washington Post they said, look at what they said, the hit piece. In the first line of the story says, Tom Homan deports people, and he's really good at it. She goes, what they do to you? I cut that out. I put it in a frame as on my wall, because that's a badge of honor. And I promised President Trump, President Trump's in this rally saying we're going to run the biggest deportation operation in the history of this nation. What he doesn't say, and we talked about it, and we agreed to it, is Tom Homan's going to run that deportation operation for him.
What you just said, I follow Congressman Clay Higgins on YouTube, and he did an amazing little short interview just a couple of weeks back about, he said that between talking with President Trump, that there is a wonderful deportation plan where the illegal immigrants will basically deport themselves. Are you, and he seems very confident about it, are you able to talk about that plan at all?
I think what he's talking about, I've been pushing a plan. First of all, not really remove themselves. Let me explain to you. First of all, we're going to look for them. We're going to remove them. We're going to put them on a plane and send their asses home. But what you can do, like I said, only 6% leave. A lot of them stay in hiding. They'll get order removal. They'll stay in hiding. They'll have 2 or 3 USC kids. When I was ICE director, I even had Republican senators call me and says, why'd you remove that guy? He's got 2 USC kids. I said, he didn't have 2 USC kids when he entered. He didn't have 2 USC kids when he's order removed, but because he hid out and had 2 USC kids, he's immune? The court order doesn't mean anything? I said, bullshit. He's on the plane tomorrow, sir. I don't care. And that's what we need to do. However, I'm pushing legislation. If we don't by legislation, do by executive order. It says this. If you're ordered removed by an immigration judge, you fail to leave, you will never, ever be able to qualify for another immigration benefit the rest of your life. And what does that mean? Because those 2 USC kids he had, they can petition for him once they get of age and get him in the country legally. Or he can come in through an amnesty program, or he can come in through a work visa or a visitor visa. If we change it, if you ignore the federal judge's order to move, you will never qualify. A lot of them would go home because they're just waiting around for that USC child get to be, 18 years old, so his child can petition to come to the United States. If you take that chance away from them, a lot of them would leave. And we're going to make it very uncomfortable for them to stay here. Look, we'll pass E-Verify. They won't be able to get a job. And we're going to be looking for them. Every illegal alien in this country, as terrible as they may sound, better be looking over their shoulders starting January 2025, because you're not supposed to be here, and you're going to go home.
So, Tom took a long way to be here today, but let's not only give him a round of applause for coming today and this presentation, but also for dedicating his life to serving this country and helping